let's talk about the soccer. Let's talk about the buildup to this game. Let's talk about how these two teams were going head to head once more in a knockout elimination type of match. I love this. Before we get into everything, I just got to say this right here for me, Rain, Spirit, this is a rivalry. This is like an organic type of like origin story that you have between these two clubs, and the fact that they tend to just keep meeting in these type of scenarios. This is the type of stuff that like rivalries is based on.
Oh,
It's not just sort of regional. I love that it's like two teams from completely opposite sides of the country. It's just such fantastic stuff. For this one, though, in the build up to it, we chatted about it on the previews of this game, Lisa. We talked a little bit about the fact that Rain were the top seeded team in Challenge Cup. We talked about how there was overlap and frustrations and event conflict in terms of where this semifinal was going to be played. Rain, unfortunately, unable to play at Lumen Field because of the CONCACAF Champions League match that's taking place there. They scrambled to try to find somewhere else. The silver lining and mutual kind of beneficial thing there was, well, what if we tried to keep you both of these teams on the East Coast? Okay, let's play the game at Segra Field. Scratch that. We're not doing it. We're actually going to have it at Audi Field. There was a ton of buildup to this, and then they played each other just 2 days ago in the regular season. Rain losing that one 2-1, and then this semifinal coming down to penalty kicks.
Holy cow.
Let's start from the beginning. When we saw these starting lineups drop, Lisa, for example, did anything stand out? Did anything surprise you? Did anything just feel right to you when you saw the 11s for both of these teams?
I know this is our job, but I'm like, why can't we talk about the handball and the penalty kicks? But you're right. We got to start at the beginning. We got to start at the beginning. The starting lineups that rolled out. Yeah, we have to talk about it because there was rotation. And in our preview of these matches, we knew we were going to see rotation. Day ago, OL Reign and Laura Harvey put out that their injury report list was zip. Not a player listed as questionable, not a player listed as unavailable. And then just hours before kickoff of this OL Reign Washington Spirit match, Quinn, the midfielder, the engine for OL Reign, is listed out, which definitely changed things for OL Reign and Laura Harvey. Quinn's a player that can control a game. And I hate to say it, I think it would have been a different outcome if Quinn was playing for OL Reign. So Quinn unavailable. That's a dagger in the heart for any OL Reign player, fan, coach. And then looking at the starting lineup for Washington Spirit, we saw Ashley Sanchez get a start in the front line. No Andy Sullivan in the midfield as well. So starting sixes, defensive midfielders for both sides are out in Quinn and Sullivan. And I like seeing Sanchez a little bit higher up the pitch. However, I don't think that Washington Spirit controlled as much of the ball in the midfield without having Sanchez in there. It's almost like a double-edged sword. To play her up top alongside Hatch and Rodman is where Sanchez can thrive, and she has so much more freedom and flexibility in a forward line. But she controls so much of the play when she is in the midfield. So those are the things that stood out to me.
Oh my gosh,
off the bat. And having Kelly O'Hara get a start as well, because she went out 2 matches ago with an injury. She only played 20 minutes in the last match that these two played in the regular season just last weekend. But O'Hara got the start, and Emily Sonnet back in the back line for Washington Spirit as well.
Listen, I looking at those starting 11s drop, I'm right with you. I think in the preview, we chatted a little bit about this. We said that with the quick turnaround for both of these teams coming off of that regular season opener to this Challenge Cup semifinal, player rotation is going to be something that's going to come into effect here for this match. Who is going to be available and why? Is the potential for limited minutes going to be something that we see play out? And we did, as a matter of fact, end up seeing that with certain personnel on the pitch. But I think the fact that you had Andy Sullivan and Quinn unavailable for either side of the ball, we saw the midfield kind of that middle third was just I want to be as polite as possible here, but there were just some big key players missing there, and it was a struggle. I think at times it was I don't know if I would call it a game of real momentum swings by any means, but it almost felt like there were certain stretches of time during the regulation where either team struggled to really sort of take control of the game. I would say within the first 75 minutes of the match, quite frankly, because we saw some real momentum shift kind of come into play. But these two headed into halftime scoreless. It was 0-0 into halftime. Seeing OL Reign having less of the possession at this point and, watching the Spirit have more of it, but not doing as much with it, quite frankly, in that
really
first
good way
half.
to put it.
It was like I said, it was just a real mixed bag for me of like not so much of who wanted it more. Like it's very evident that both of these teams wanted to advance to the final, but there was just like no one was actually like biting their teeth into this match and taking control of it. Now, looking into the second half, I think is when we started to see some of these momentum swings a little bit, right?
Yes, I agree completely. I mean, possession wise, it just from the naked eye, if I'm not looking at any of my stats that I do have pulled up, but I'm not going to look at them because it was almost as if OL Reign was controlling so much of the game. And when Washington got the ball, they were just looking to push, which created really effective chances and dangerous looks. But OL Reign was controlling so much of the flow of the game. And in the pregame, and a lot of credit to Jen Hildreth and Ali Watt, they had a great call on this one. And the pregame, getting a little chat with Rose Lavelle of OL Reign about the last match against these two. And Lavelle saying, we didn't control enough of the game. I didn't find the ball as a midfielder enough to dictate the tempo and the pace of this game. And I'm going to do that so much better in this match. And that was a way pregame, like before warmups type of interview that happened. And then as we watched this game unfold, I was keeping a very close eye on Rose Lavelle because she's a player that can change exactly how she's going to play. And that's what she did. She didn't push herself so much higher, but instead dropped back to find the spaces in the midfield between Washington Spirit's Feist, Rotter, and Almer in that triangle in the midfield. And when Rose gets on the ball, she's just so much more dangerous, but she wasn't getting the ball and just looking to go forward, which we see Lavelle do so frequently. Instead, she was being that playmaker. She was really dictating how the play went, switching from side to side. The high press from both sides was really entertaining because it was just nonstop. Go, 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 go. Bethany Balcer did a fantastic job being able to drive the defensive shape of OL Reign behind her. So as the ball comes in to the back line between O'Hara, Sonnet, Staub, and Bogalski for Washington Spirit, Balcer sits in the middle, and whatever way the ball goes initially, she cuts off the entire other side, which tells the 10 other players behind her that the ball is going to stay on this left side of the field. That's where we trap, and that's where we win it back. And Washington was incredibly patient in trying to build that out. And that's why there was zeros at the end of this, at the end of the 90 minutes. But holy cow, we got to give a shout out to the goalkeepers. I mean, Fallon, Tullis-Joyce, Aubrey Kingsbury, both sides. Tremendous game. These two had a tremendous game.
I don't want to come on here and butter my own bread, but look, when we're talking about making predictions and talking about things, when I had to write about this a little bit for CBSSports.com, I said that maybe the defense was actually going to be stealing the headlines out of this match versus the attack. I mean, we've seen the highlights. We cover this league week in, week out. My goodness, daily. Sometimes it feels like right here on Attacking Third. Yeah. But Hatch, Sanchez, Rodman, for me, not really the stars of the show in this one. I think it really came down to sort of these defensive shapes from both sides, quite frankly, during this match. And then obviously with this game going to penalty kicks, looking at somebody like Aubrey Kingsbury, not only making a couple stops, but at one point stepping up and converting a PK of her own as we get into
the third one.
Oh my goodness.
The third one. It's not like she took the 8th or the 9th or even the 5th or the 6th. Aubrey Kingsbury took the third penalty kick for Washington Spirit, which means that she was going to take one the entire time. Also, Rose Lavelle took one. We had a conversation about that. Rose Lavelle had a penalty kick saved just a few days ago when these two teams played in the run of play. This time, Rose Lavelle steps up and buries her penalty kick in this one. So a lot of, oh gosh, there's just so much to break down. But I mean, these goalkeepers, they did fantastic.
When I'm thinking of some of the end-to-end that we saw in this game. I don't know how much I could sit there and say a lot of there was a lot of that. But this final 15 minutes of regulation, Lisa, O'Reilly just refusing to allow this ball to exit the Spirits half and just constantly staying and keeping a presence in the final third here. And we're building up and building up and building up. And it just sort of felt like at any moment there was going to be the break of this bend. And it just didn't happen for this all rain side. There was a moment right early in the second half where a goal was, broke through, but it was called offside. The replay on that, Jess Fishlock, wildly offside on that one in terms of the camera angle and the delivery. Alana Cook at one point looking like that counted.
Yeah, she scored it. And she was like, "Are we sure, guys?
Sure about this?" I loved the body language and the reaction there. But these final 15 minutes, winning corners, winning dangerous throw-ins for the Reign. And you just almost wondered what was going to happen. But Aubrey Bledsoe making herself big, having a couple really big saves on Bethany Balser, some 1v1 opportunity at one point, forcing a different angle from the striker, going just wide. And you just wondered as the time kept winding down. And I kept thinking of you, buddy. I was like, oh no, Lisa's prediction is going to come true. They're going to go straight to penalty kicks. But a very, very unfortunate moment that we absolutely have to spend a little bit of time chatting about, Lisa. We're talking about all of this movement and this action from OL towards the end of the game. And that includes
the second half, Sandra, in the second half, 14 shots for OL Reign, 8 shots for Washington Spirit. That's just in the second half. And then when you look defensively, Aubrey Kingsbury had 8 saves in the run of play.
Big.
Huge.
Big. We're talking about other big things, and that includes moments of high drama. Stoppage time in regulation here. We have a moment in which many of us were watching this on the stream, unless you were lucky and fortunate to be able to witness this game live. That's a little bit of a different scenario. But the angles that we were watching on this stream, Lisa, we see a moment in the box where a ball is played in, and it's the final attempt for a game to get put away in regulation. At this point, multiple substitutions have been made for the Reign specifically. We're just going to center on them for the bit. We saw the return of Megan Rapinoe to NWSL action in this game. Laura Harvey in post-game comments, and we'll get a little more into that as well, admitting to the fact that Megan Rapinoe was put into this game for penalty kick situations, period.
Yes.
Confirmed. And here we have a moment.
A player coming back from an injury that probably can't run a lot. Like there's so many different reasonings behind that, but a player that can knock down penalty kicks.
A stoppage time sub with a purpose.
Yeah.
And here is the potential for a moment to be decided in regulation. And what we saw on the cameras, Lisa, I don't think it's unfair to say this at all, was we saw a clear handball in the box. Talk to me as a defender. What's going on there?
This is a 100% an obvious handball. You can even tell from the look on Anna Helferty's face after it hits her hand and her hand ricochets away from her body from the force of the ball. She looks like, oh crap, I just did that. Like, let's just run. Let's just get the ball out, because you never want to make that face too known, because that's what the official is going to look at if they don't get a clear vision of what actually happened. And clearly this official did not. There was a lot of bodies in the box, and this handball happened on the far side of the field, and the sideline official referee was on the near side of the field. So there's probably like 7 or 8 bodies in between the sideline official and where Anna Helferty actually hit the ball with her hand. And of course, on the replay, we can see it clear as day as this is happening. I honestly have no idea how the center official missed this. It's almost like just even if you miss it, you can see the redirection of the ball, because as a ball that's being whipped into the box, all of a sudden comes to a slow bounce and Kingsbury can just gobble it up like a child hit the ball. no, it had to be slowed down somehow. The redirection of it by the handball, this was a really big mistake, a really big turn of events that ultimately went in Washington Spirit's favor. Because
it's a game-changing missed call, 100%. I don't think that's unfair to say at all about this moment. Last I checked, I don't think you and I are going to be getting fined for talking about officiating in this game. But there were, again, we're talking about certain waves of the game, certain stretches of the game, and there were moments there where you could just sort of tell, like, perhaps it's a high competitive match. It's a knockout.
There's a lot
round.
going on.
There's a knockout round game, and perhaps there's a bit of mentality amongst the officiating crew that, listen, these are two top teams. It's a knockout round stage. We're gonna let them play. There's these conversations.
I think there was that vibe throughout the entirety of the 90 minutes, because there was some chippy plays, there was some calls being made, a number of fouls being called but not being whistled until the third one happening. This referee definitely let these teams play, but that's a handball. That is a 100% handball in the box. It changed the direction of the ball. It changed the velocity of the ball.
It changed the outcome of the game.
It changed the outcome of the game, but you can't even like base it on that, because rule wise, we got to get our rules expert in here. But rules wise, it changed the direction of the ball, which changed the outcome of that specific play because there was runners in behind. It's a different thing sometimes when it's like the ball is just going out anyway. I kicked it out and then it went off my hand. Like, there's so many different ways you can look at that, but that was a clear handball that was missed. And that I understand why Laura Harvey is pissed off.
I listen, I respect the concept as an officiating crew that you understand that you're going into a highly competitive match that has knockout that is a knockout game. That means that it's win or go home, and you want to try to call a fair game while letting the game play out. And there were multiple moments where you could see on both sides of the pitch that both teams were expressing some frustration at some moments during this game with the official. You're talking about some questionable, yellows coming out after the fact or too late after the fact. I mean, my goodness, you're talking about a moment. We talked about this goal that was called offside, and this is a specific moment of the officiating that we can look at and point at and say, okay, this was a moment in which they huddled up, spoke about it. No goal allowed. It was offside. I do not understand why you have a near game-defining moment like this in stoppage time of regulation, and you do not take the same consideration as you would have in perhaps the hour mark of the game. It was just unreal body language for me to sort of be at home taking a look at and view it. Didn't want to hear it. Did not want to hear it. Blew the whistle. You're done. You're done. We're going to PKs.
Yes, it's almost as if like his watch was going off, like his timer was beeping, and he looks down and he's like, well, I missed the handball. This is just Lisa speculating. I don't know what happened, but like, that's almost what it felt like, because how do you miss that? How do you not at least talk with your both sideline officials and say, did you guys see anything? That this place is going crazy. Jess Fishlock's yelling in their faces. Megan Rapinoe's in his face. I don't understand what happened. It was bad.
Well, hey, listen, we may or may not know. Hopefully we have some great reporters on the ground who can maybe sort of get a chance to ask pro referees about that. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But that was the scenario that set everything into motion for penalty kicks. And of course, the penalty kick shootout wasn't something that was going to be easygoing. It was already high drama. It's already high drama when you go into a penalty kick scenario.
Of course.
But then you're talking about going to sudden death in a penalty kick situation. It was It was insane. Did you have any moments throughout this, Lisa, where you were like tipping one way or the other? Because there's moments of momentum that can take place even in a penalty kick shootout. Were there moments where you're like, okay, Rain have got this, and Spirit don't, or Spirit got this and the Rain don't?
So I love this question, Sandra. This is really tricky for me because watching these, I've seen Aubrey Kingsbury stop and be a goalkeeper against so many penalty kicks, and she always has this look on her face that is so determined, that is so badass, that is so, I'm going to take the third penalty kick no matter what. We're not getting to sudden death in these penalty kicks. I'm going to take one as a goalkeeper, I'm going to bury it, and then I'm going to stop all these other ones. And she had that look of determination on her face, which gives me as a viewer a lot of confidence in Washington Spirit and in Kingsbury. However, watching Fallon Tullis-Joyce make all of these tremendous saves against these penalty kicks as a first-year player in this league, Tullis-Joyce is a player that has done her research. She knows the opponents that she is going up against, and she watches the run up to the ball, to which way the hips are moving. She didn't have it all on her face that, yeah, I can take any one of these players. It wasn't scared though. It was almost just like a blank expression, which as I was watching this, at first I was like, yes, Kingsbury's got this. And then I'm like, wait, here comes Tullis-Joyce, just no emotion and being able to stop all of these. I was a little nervous for Rose Lavelle to take hers. I was a little nervous for Trinity Rodman to take hers, just chewing on the gum for Rodman. I was nervous watching this. Meanwhile, we got a whole other game happening too, coming down to the final minute. I was freaking out.
I know. I was with you. I know you and I both had our multiple devices. We were like messaging each other throughout these games. I'm with you though. It's a high. It's for even those of us who are just watching it. You know, it's a high tense situation. I was like, oh no. I was like, you got to have your lineups. You got to have these scenarios prepared. Only the coolest under pressure can do this. And then you see these very young players taking PKs, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's just a baby. Like Trinity Rodman. I'm like, oh my gosh.
And even Fallon Tullis-Joyce. This is a young player that is first year in the league and now has all this pressure on her shoulders to do this with Megan Rapinoe on the pitch as well. Like there's just so many different factors that come into this. Ultimately, it ends up being the longest penalty kick shootout in NWSL history. It is also the first time a goalkeeper has taken a penalty kick in a shootout. And Kingsbury, she shoots at third, and she makes 2 saves. This is the first time Washington Spirit win in a penalty kick shootout out of their 3 that they have been in. This is the first one that they have won. And now Spirit go to their 2nd straight final.
I'm gonna ask Lisa, before we get into the next semifinal, if you had to name a breakout player or MVP for this game, who is it? Is it the obvious choice?
Yes, it's Aubrey Kingsbury. There's no question about that, Sandra. Next question.
Let's do the post mortem for all Rain here in the Challenge Cup. Player for you that was maybe MVP of this team in the Challenge Cup.
Oh, that's a good question. Honestly, Tullis-Joyce, she had a fantastic Challenge Cup, really broke onto the scene. And in the last match against Washington Spirit, I guess that was the regular season, but throughout the Challenge Cup just came up big time and time again. There wasn't one player for OL Reign that stood out, because out of however many goals they scored, Bethany Balcer is the only one that got 2 of them. Otherwise, it was spread out amongst players. There was a different starting lineup every single time Laura Harvey put her team out on the pitch in the Challenge Cup. The consistency really coming from Tullis-Joyce, I'm going to say. I liked what I saw from her.
I love leaning into 2 goalkeepers, as choosing them for both sides of the pitch here. I'm going to make a special case for Allie Watt as well. I really enjoyed watching what she was bringing for the Reign over the course of the Challenge Cup. I'm excited to see her continued development over the course.
Just a taste. We just got a taste from Watt.
And now we're going to hopefully get to see what she could do over a regular season with the Reign. But I'm with you, goalkeepers for me in this one as well.